Hello from Southern Ontario, Canada, December 20th. So, 2 out of the last 3 evenings, my roommate Jono and I have been sitting at the kitchen table discussing politics, which we usually don't do because I very quickly want to choke him. His political outlook is that of apathetic denial. I guess we kind of started out with the world stage, the WEF, and he's like, Klaus Schwab has no power over anything. Why do you believe that? That's just, I mean, he's who is he? He's nobody. The WEF, what? And I'm like, well, they're connected with, the IMF, the WHO, the UN, NATO, blah, blah. He's like, it's not going to happen. It's not. So we won't dwell here on that part of the subject that we discussed, and then we moved to Canadian politics. And I said, because I'll come to it in a second here, I guess. I'd said polling shows that roughly and averaged out across the country, there's been a 10% increase in the Canadian populace's support of what transpired in Ottawa, the Freedom Convoy. And this is due to the publicity of the investigation into the enactment of the Emergencies Act. John's going, see, people are waking up. And I said, yeah, but in February or whatever, late February, I think it is, they're supposed to announce the judgment on that. And they're just going to, give Trudeau a pass. His hair's still lovely. And so that support that increase of 10%, if that's valid, will then swing back the other way, right? He's like, Trudeau's a narcissist. He thinks he's getting away with all this stuff, but more and more people are waking up. I mean, who comes in our house here who would have anything to do with Trudeau? And I said, well, nobody, but if we go just 40 miles to the southwest into Toronto, it's like a million miles away politically. They're all woke left. Oh, people are seeing through him. They're not, I'm like, well, polling shows his popularity is still hovering around the 30% mark. Really hasn't changed. He's like, oh, polls aren't, nah. Well, that may be so, but whatever. I mean, not much has changed since the snap election and in 2019. And he got back into power then. He's like, no, he's just a narcissist, thinks he's going to get away with it. I'm like, well, yeah, he's a sociopath, sure, yeah, but, so then we moved to Bill C-11 and C-21. He's going, well, you keep saying Bill C-21, second reading in the Senate, and it's going to pass. And he's been talking about it forever. He hasn't come and taken a one yet. It's just one of his narcissistic fantasies. And I'm like, well, it was 3 years ago he started this, And as far as I can figure out, and I can't confirm this figure, any government that's disarmed their populace, it takes them about 4 years to do it. Previous video, it took Venezuela 3. He's like, oh, it's not going to happen. I'm like, well, it seems to be progressing along quite nicely. It went from military style assault weapons, of which there isn't any, and they keep parroting that, but I won't beleaguer that point. You've heard it all before. To now, it's little squirrel plinkers, you know what I mean? Projectiles the size of a pencil eraser. Do about the same damage with a good slingshot, really. And they're not going to pay for them. Oh, it's not going to happen. Who's going to come get them? So, well, I don't know. We have no idea how many Chinese military there are here in Canada, and there were UN troops in Ottawa, and they were actually armed, not rubber bullets and tear gas canisters. They had the full Monty. He refuses to accept that there's UN troops in Ottawa, as an example. I said, I can show you hours of footage. He's like, no. I said, well, when they cleared the bridge at Windsor, um, they didn't hide their insignias with tapes, and the vehicles said UN, those water cannon things and stuff. He's just like, I'm like, do you want to see the footage? There's that denial, right? So then Bill C-11, where the government takes control of the internet, has passed second reading in the Senate. And he's going, it won't happen. You know how many satellites are up there? I'm like, well, my phone doesn't connect directly to a satellite. I have to pay a carrier. Don't you get a phone bill? Well, yeah, but they can't sit on the rooftops and shoot down those beams from the satellite. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't work like that, John. They shut them off and make it illegal for you to access them. See China, see North Korea. He's like, no, it can't be done somewhere. Somebody's going to be able to directly hook to and get the news. And I'm like, what? So somebody up in Tuktoyaktuk, manages to get something off a satellite and sends me a letter so I can talk about it on my channel? Like, nope. Complete and absolute denial. And his final line of defense is always, the Canadian people aren't going to put up with this. And I'm like, well, who are the Canadian people? I'm trying my thing with my humble little, I'm a guppy in a sea of information channel here. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even know this stuff's happening, Jono. He's like, oh, it's not as bad as, as you make it out to be. And I'm like, well, we're just on the tip of the iceberg as to how bad it gets financially. So your business now struggles with supply issues, not just directly to his business, but all the other businesses he works with. So how's your bank account? Mine runs in the red constantly. 3-4 years ago, it had money in it. Now it doesn't. It's like, well, we're drinking beer and eating well and everything's good. And I'm like, you used to own a house and a cottage. Now you rent a room from me in a dump. I mean, you're not hurting, but I am, but he's not, but whatever. Well, it's not near as bad as you say it is. I'm like, more than 50% of the Canadian population's on the brink of insolvency. He's the same age as I am. When in your lifetime, Jono, have you seen that? Wow, it's not as bad as, food bank access up 30%. What is it, like half of the Canadian children, their life is affected by poverty? Oh, it's not as bad as. Oh, you just wait, Scotty. He's not going to get away with all this stuff. Oh, he's been getting away with it so far, hasn't he? So I think that covers all the points of how this conversation goes with the denial. Just, I mean, he never took this. He's not one of those guys. But when faced with reality, just, no, the Canadian people aren't going to put up with it. Well, my final argument is, well, apparently 50% of them are. So, and, bottom line, I said, Jono, the lovely meal we're eating tonight was, and I'll mention it in passing, a local supporter of the channel brought me 2 bags of delightful protein groceries. You know what I mean? There wasn't a mealy bug or a cricket in the whole affair, and that's what we're feasting on tonight, Jono. He's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, the larder isn't flush. Well, can you go grocery shopping this week, Jono? Well, I'm waiting for some money because the supply chain held up the order to the customer at the shop, and I'm like, And in 29 years of operating that business, how long has it been now since you've had this kind of cash flow problem with your business due to supply of materials? right? The business has always done well. Well, it's only been the last, well, yeah, well,